Is this how it begins? The next world war, not in Europe, not in Pacific, but in Middle East. Israel and Iran, two powerful nations, one region, burning with politics and power struggles. Tensions are boiling, missiles have flown, leaders are threatening war. So what's really going on? Are we watching the beginning of something global or just another cycle in an old conflict? Let's dive in. This is my last video. So before that, this is my last video of the summer, as my school is starting soon. So I will be taking a short break. I will be back with more content as soon as possible. Until then, please support me by liking, subscribing and sharing. Your support means the world to me. This video may be less edited than usual, but I really wanted to share my thoughts with you before my break, and this is a quite long video. So what's really going on? Are we watching the beginning of something global or just another cycle of an old conflict? As Iran-Israel conflict had started, and I will just give you a viewpoint of the war. I am a neutral observer and I have no intention of taking any side. It's up to you what you think, what is wrong and what is right. To understand today's conflict, we need to go back, way back. Iran, formerly Persia, had always been in the eyes of global superpower due to its crucial geopolitical location, connecting South Asia, urban peninsula, and oil-rich Arabian Gulf. It lies at the heart of major trade and energy routes like Strait of Hormuz. With vast natural resources, especially oil, gas, Iran had held strategic importance since 1800s. The unique position had made it a constant focus of the foreign interest, invasions and political interference from powerful nations seeking control over the region's energy and influence. So let's start. In 1800s, while dynasties like Khazar ruled Iran, the country had a unique political religious structure. Unlike typical monarchs, Iran had real influence, often led with religious scholars known as ulemas and ayatollahs, who had held immense spiritual and political power. These religious leaders didn't just guide people in matter of faith, they often influenced or even controlled political decisions. In many cases, even the king had to listen what ulema said, showing how deeply religion and politics were connected to Iran's systems. In 1800s, Iran's geographical importance grew even more to its location. To south, it bordered British-controlled India, and to its north, it faced the expanding Russian Empire. And due to its geopolitical importance, Russians and British eyed Iran, and Iran was stuck in the middle. In 1804, Iran was attacked by Russian Empire as part of the expansionist ambition in the Caucasus region. After being defeated, Iran was forced to sign the Treaty of Gulistan in 1813. The treaty was a major blow to Iran's sovereignty. It was not only ceded large territories in Caucasus to Russia, but also stripped Iran of its military rights in the Caspian Sea, giving it full naval control to Russia and taking rights that Russian traders could now trade over Iranian traders. This marked the beginning of a long period of foreign pressure and territorial loss for Iran. So then, after losing the second war to Russia, Iran was forced to sign again a second treaty, the Treaty of Turkmeny in 1820, which was again a severe blow to its sovereignty. Iran had to even give up more territories in Caucasus and had to even pay a heavy fine of 20 million silver rubles and allow Russia to special trade and legal privilege within its border. More importantly, Iran had lost all its rights in Caspian Sea, which was entirely under the Russian control. After the death of Fateh Ali Shah, the emperor of Iran, his grandson Muhammad Ali Shah became the king, followed by Nasruddin Shah. He followed a more aggressive stance, especially towards regaining influence in Herat, a vital city in today's Afghanistan. Iran launched a military campaign to reclaim it, which brought a directly conflict into British, who had considered Herat a gateway to protect their Indian empire. This led to tension, and eventually Iran had to sign Treaty of Paris in 1857. Where Iran was forced to give up claims over Herat and promised not to interfere in Afghan affairs. In this way, while Russia gathered control in the north through treaties of Gulistan and Turkmeny, British secured its influence in the south and east through the Treaty of Paris, effectively dividing Iran's strategic space between two imperial powers. Yes, and there was a major turning point. As foreign influence in Iran economy deepened, anger began to grow among local population, especially the Bajaris, religious scholars, and the ordinary citizens. They believed that king was selling the country to the foreigners by granting them economic concessions and allowing them to control key industries like tobacco and silk. This frustration led to widespread protest. So in 1901, under financial pressure, Muzaffar al-Din Shah granted British businessman William D. Arki the exclusive right to explore and extract oil across most of the Iran. In exchange, Iran would receive just 16% of the profit and an annual fee of only 20 million pounds, a deal that heavily favored the British. This led to creation of Anglo-Persian Oil Company, which was later become British Petroleum (BP). As oil was discovered in large quantities, the British began exporting and selling Iran oil globally, earning huge profit while Iran saw little benefits. The Iranian people viewed this as economic exploitation and angered how their economic wealth was handed over to foreigners. This aspect played a major role in sparkling of the constitutional revolution of 1906, demanding reforms, parliamentary power, and control over the natural resources. So, as the foreign exploitation deepened and the public anger grew, many Iranians began saying that the king was useless and only serving foreign interest. In response, with strong support from Mullanas and Bajaris, people pushed a new political system that would limit the royal power. Inspired by British constitutional model, they demand a constitutional monarchy where the king would exist but have limited power. This led to formation of Majlis during the constitutional revolution of 1906. The Majlis of draft powers, approved budgets, make key decisions, while the Shah became more of a symbolic head and just a showcase. After Muzaffar al-Din Shah died, shortly after signing the constitution, his son Muhammad al-Shah became the new ruler. So, unlike his father, Muhammad Ali Shah strongly opposed Majlis system. He believed that the constitutional setup had stripped the monarchy of real power, turning the king into just a ceremonial figure, with most of the decision being made by Majlis. He felt that Shah had become powerless. Furious that his authority was being challenged, he saw that the constitutional movement as a threat to royal rule and began planning to take back full control. So tensions between Muhammad Ali Shah and Majlis quickly escalated in 1908 with the help of Russian trained Cossack brigade. The Shah ordered bombarding of Majlis building in Tehran, arresting many constitutional leaders, and tried to abolish the constitutional altogether. This sparked outrage across the country. Revolutionary forces made of constitution, tribal fighters, and supporters from the cities like Tabriz, Isfahan, and Gilan rose in the armed conflict. After the months of conflicts, march into Tehran in 1908, they defeated the royal troops and forced Muhammad Ali Shah to abdicate. He fled to Russian embassy for protection and later took refuge in Russia. So after Muhammad Ali Shah was overthrown and fled to Russia in 1909, his young son Ahmad Shah was crowned, but being as a child, he had no real power. During this time, Iran had effectively no true monarch and all authority was shifted to Majlis. The Majlis supported the people and religious scholars, beginning the marking of all major decisions, running the country without any royal interference. Ahmad Shah became more of a figure with no real power, and the real power was in the hands of constitutionalists. In 1984, after World War I began, the global balance of the power shifted. Russia, which had previously been dominant force in northern Iran, became deeply entangled in its own internal crisis. The Russian Revolution in 1917 and witnessed and withdraw its forces from Iran. This created a temporary power vacuum. However, British refused to leave as Iranian oil had become vital to its British Empire, especially after British Navy had shifted from coal to oil. In fact, Iran supplied oil a significant portion to British fuel needs, making it strategically impossible British to give up control. While Russia had faded from the scene, British influence over the only grew stronger both politically and economically. So after Russia had left, the Iranian people were deeply unhappy with continued British presence. The British were extracting huge amounts of oil through Anglo-Persian Company, but Iran received very few in return. Most of the profits went to British, fueling their navy and economy, while ordinary Iranians lived in poverty. This caused widespread anger. People felt that their national wealth was being stolen, and they saw British as new occupiers, no different from Russians before. As public anger intensified, the Majlis demanded the British forces to leave Iran and call for an end for foreign interference. Under growing international pressure, especially after World War I and the rise of global anti-colonial sentiments, British were forced to reduce its direct presence in Iran. However, the country was left weak, divided and unstable. Amid this chaos, a military officer named Reza Khan emerged in 1921. He led a successful coup with the support of British, seizing control of Tehran and becoming the Prime Minister, and eventually declaring himself the Shah in 1925. And he founded the Pahlavi dynasty. So the Khazar dynasty had eventually ended. Once Reza Khan rose to power and became the Reza Shah Pahlavi, he began manipulating and weakening the Majlis to consolidate his own authority. Although the Majlis still existed in name, it was no longer truly independent. Reza Shah filled it with loyalists and government-controlled candidates, turning it into a rubber-stamp parliament that simply approved his decisions. Any opposition was silent through censorship or exile. He gradually dismantled the democratic elements of the constitution system, turning Iran into centralized autocracy. Reza Shah Pahlavi was heavily influenced by Western models of the government, especially the countries like Turkey under Ataturk and economic European modernization ideals. He believed that for Iran to become strong and independent, it had to adopt Western style modernization. He introduced sweeping reforms, building railways, modern schools, universities, and a national army. He reduced the power of religious leaders, banned traditional clothing like the veil, inspired by the and especially for the women. Inspired by the nationalist idea, he pushed to create a strong centralized state free from tribal divisions and foreign interference. While Reza Shah Pahlavi aggressively modernized Iran, building roads, railway industries, and modern institutions, his reforms were mostly top-down and often overlooked by the struggles of the ordinary people. To fund these massive projects, he increased tax, placing a heavy burden on the poor and rural population. Many small farmers, traders couldn't keep up with this rising cost. While the benefits of modernization were mostly seen in the cities and among the elites. So, although Iran had appeared to be progressing on the surface, poverty and inequality grew, and many Iranians felt ignored and oppressed under this rule. To fund this large-scale modernization effort, Reza Shah did not only raise general tax, but also increased Iran's shares of oil profits of 16 to 20% in negotiation with Anglo-Persian Oil Company. So let's dive in 1938. During World War II, Iran declared neutrality, but its strategic importance and vast oil reserves made it too important for allies to ignore. In 1941, both United Kingdom and Soviet USSR invaded Russia in a joint operation. Their main reasons were, so let's discuss. First, oil and supply route. Iran was critical for Allied supplied line to the Soviet Union, known as Persian Corridor. They needed to transport weapons, food, and fuel to the Soviets, and Iran was the shortest and the safest land route. Second, suspicion of Reza Shah. Although officially neutral, Reza Shah was seen as sympathetic to Nazi Germany. He had allowed many German engineers and advisors into Iran, which worried British and USSR, who feared Iran could become an Axis ally or a base for Nazi operations. As a result, the Allies demand Reza Shah to expel the Germans. While he refused, the British and the USSR launched a joint invasion in August 1941, quickly defeating the Iran forces. To prevent instability, they forced Reza Shah to abdicate and placed his son Mohammad Reza Pahlavi on his throne, someone they believed would cooperate more with allies. Iran then became a vital supply route and remained under Allied occupation until the end of the war. Although the Allied invasion in World War II brought great disruptions and economic hardship to Iran, such as inflation, food shortage, and losses of sovereignty, it also drew in a new power, the United States, USA. While USA supplied aid and helped build facilities such as road, railways, and military infrastructure to supply war effort, it was not purely out of generosity. It was the United States has its own strategic interest in Iran. America wants to limit Soviet influence, securing access to oil and expands its political presence in Iran. So while Americans' aid improved some infrastructure, Iran remained caught between global powers using its land's resources for their own benefits. After World War I, although the British and Americans agreed to withdraw their forces from Iran, the Soviets refused to leave. The northern regions, especially around the Azerbaijan and the Kurdistan. Instead, in 1945, the US supported the creation of two breakaway puppet states, the Azerbaijan's People Government and the Kurdish Republic of Mahabad. These republics were backed by Soviet military and the political support aiming to spread communist influence and secure a long-term control over Iran territory. Iran's central government weakened, struggling could not immediately stop it. So, after World War War II, growing resistance in Iran towards British domination of the oil industry, especially the Anglo-Iranian War (AIOC), led to a strong nationalist movement. In 1951, the Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh nationalized Iran's oil, aiming to take full control from British. This angered the US, UK and USA. Jointly organized Operation Ajax, a CIA-led coup that overthrew Mossadegh and restored Shah's full power. After the coup, to reward American involvement and reduce sole British control, Iran's oil industry was resurrected in 1984. A new international oil consortium was formed where British Petroleum (BP) got 40%, American companies including Exxon Mobil, Chevron received 40%, the Dutch Shell and the French CFP got 10%. And the Iran only received 10% ownership and with 50% of their profits on the paper, but still little real control. In this way, the US gained a major control share of the Iran's oil, becoming deeply involved in its economy and politics to Cold War. This also planted the seed for the future reinstatement towards American interference. Although first major sanction against Iran by the US and UK came in 1950s, and the Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh nationalized the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company in 1951. In response, British imposed a global embargo on Iranian oil, blocking its exports and freezing Iranian assets overseas. The US supported British by pressurizing other countries not to buy Iranian oil and refusing to help Iran financially, leading a massive economic crisis. Later, after the 1975 Islamic Revolution, where Shah was overthrown and USA's embassy staff were taken hostage in Tehran, the United States imposed harsh sanctions on Iran. This include freezing nearly 20 billion of Iranian assets, cutting off economic and military aid, banning Iran oil imports to USA. In the years that followed, especially due to concern over nuclear program, both USA and UK expanded sanctions targeting oil exports, banking and financial systems, targeting trade in key goods and technology. So, after 1955 CIA UK backed up coup, which was Operation Ajax, which removed Prime Minister Mohammad Mojahid and restored Shah's full authority. After that, Mohammad Reza ruled as an absolute monarch, heavily backed by United States, which saw him as a key ally in the Cold War. He launched White Revolution in 1960s, a series of modernization and reforms programs aimed at providing education, women's rights, land distribution, and industrial growth. However, his rule was also marked by authoritarianism, corruption, censorship, and use of Savak, a secret police, to crush dissent. Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini was a prominent Shia cleric, religious leader, and a central figure of the 1975 Islamic Revolution. He rose to prominence in 1960 for openly criticizing Mohammad Reza Shah regime, especially the White Revolution reforms, and the Shah close ties with United States and the Western powers. Khomeini was arrested and was later exiled. But to continue the influence, Iran through powerful speeches and writings that were smuggled into country. He argued that Iran should be governed by Islamic principles led by religious scholars, a concept called Wilayat-e-Faqih, guardian, which means guardianship of Islamic jurists. In 1979, after a widespread and arrest, the Shah fled Iran and Khomeini returned from exile with massive public support. He soon became the supreme leader, establishing an Islamic Republic of Iran, where the highest authority rests with clergy, the religious scholars. So, after 1975 Islamic Revolution, Iran transformed from monarchy into theocracy, a system where leaders hold the highest power under the leadership of Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini. Iran adopted a new constitution based off the Shia Islamic principles, establishing the Islamic Republic of Iran. At the heart of the system in the concept of Wilayat-e-Faqih, which gives the ultimate authority to a senior colleague called the supreme leader. So in Iran theocracy, the supreme leader controls major institutions including military, judiciary, media and foreign policy, and even has the final say in who can run the president or parliament. While Iran holds the election for president and parliament, which is Majlis, all the candidates must be approved the Guardian Council, a powerful religious body. In Iran's Islamic theocracy, even if the elected officials like president or members of the parliament want to improve relationship with the US, they can't. This is because Iran's political system is built on anti-Western, especially anti-American, American ideology, which was central to 1975 Islamic Revolution. Many leaders are elected based on their commitment to oppose US influence, and the supreme leader who holds the ultimate power must approve all the major decisions, especially on the foreign policy. This deep distrust and hostility between the US and Iran is rooted in decades of history. For Iran, the 1955 CIA-led coup and many other. So it is not entirely Iran's fault that the relationship with USA are so strained. The conflict is deeply rooted in the long history of foreign interference, broken trust and mutual betrayal. On one hand, Iran had deeply been affected by Western interference, starting from 1955 proved that overthrew a democratically elected government, followed by decades of support of authoritarian Shah, and then economic elections, military threats and economic isolations. These actions caused real political trauma and gave rise to religious ideology and opposed weapon dominance. While Iran had legitimately historical grievance against Western powers and its desire to resist foreign dominance is understandable, openly calling for the destruction of nations like Israel is not justified. But and from Iranian leaders like Israel must be wiped off the map are extreme and dangerous and not escalate conflict. Regardless of the stance on the Palestine rights or the opposition to Israeli government or advocating for their complete erasure and it's violate the international norms, human rights and basic moral principles. While Iran insisted its nuclear, so second reason, while Iran insisted its nuclear program for peaceful purposes, the country like Israel, US, the other feared that if Iran and USA that if Iran had were to develop nuclear weapon, it could destabilize the region. The fear isn't just for Iran itself, but also for support for armed non-state groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas and Islamic Jihad in Palestine, Shiite militaries in Iraq and Syria, Houthis rebels in Yemen. These groups have been receiving front training and weapons from Iran, and many were considered terrorist organization by West. If Iran were to gain nuclear weapons, the concern is that it might abandon this group, or worse, that the nuclear technology or materials would be somehow fall into extremist hand. Regardless of one of the political view on Israel-Palestine conflict, it is a fact that Israel as a nation has made significant contribution to the world. In many fields, Israel is known for this innovation, technology, science, medicine, entrepreneurship. Despite being a small country with limited natural resources, it produced a large number of Nobel Prize winners in the fields like chemistry, economics and peace. Thank you for all the love and encouragement. So please supporting me while I am away, and I will promise I will return stronger and better. See you soon.